Yes, everyone, welcome to the next video. So in this one, we're moving on from the low interest rate environment video that we just covered and moving on to high interest rate. So interest rates are going to be high. Now, what does that mean? That's usually a state of high amount of deflation where the economy is very slowed down. That means unemployment could rise, government has rising borrowing costs, and exports cannot be competitive. So there's 3 points in there. Unemployment could rise. So how is that possible? Because the thing is, you must understand with lower amounts of inflation and of course deflation, the economy is very slowed down. Businesses aren't borrowing as much money. Some businesses having to close down because not many people have the money to actually spend inside the economy. Therefore, employment decreases, unemployment rises. Then you've got government has rising borrowing costs. So if you remember the fact, with the bond market and uh, everywhere that the government actually borrows their money, they're going to have higher rates of interest, so they're not going to be able to borrow as much, therefore less economic activity. Another thing as well, exports cannot be as competitive. So this is really going back to the first stage that we talked about in our fundamental section, where you get higher amounts of deflation, exports can't be as competitive globally. Now, high interest rates increases the cost of borrowing, so less loans are taken out. More housing market, uh, more housing market mortgage defaults. This forms housing bubbles. This is a great thing to research as well in your spare time. Search everything about housing bubbles. It will really make sense, how people actually take too many loans. Then as soon as interest rate starts rising, because they're variable interest rates usually, they have to default on these mortgages. The next step, asset purchases are subdued and tapering may have occurred significantly. So what that means is asset purchases are no longer in place like before, and of course a lot of tapering has happened. So that means less money supply rates circulating in the economy. And then in terms of investments around the world, they tend to be directed towards the bond market due to the higher return on investment due to higher interest rates. Of course, you got to think about the yields as well. Where do investors want to send all of their investments and all of their money? Somewhere where, first of all, it's safe, where it's a hedge against, a bad economy, and also where they get the highest rate of return. Now, when I was doing the research, I just found this interesting diagram that I couldn't find for the low interest rate environment, but this is a perfect explanation of what we see in high interest rates environments, and then where we start to see deflation occur. So things like increased cost of borrowing means a reduced investment, lower economic growth, higher mortgage interest payments, reduced consumption, also defaults on them payments as well. Then increased return to saving, hot money flows, fall in housing prices, appreciation in the exchange rate. Remember that in a high interest rate environment, the domestic currency, such as if we're looking at the Fed and then the USD would be the point in question, that would actually increase in value. But of course, you now understand that this is not always a good thing, because you've got to understand how does this affect the imports and exports. Now, just a brief summary of what actually tends to happen. You start to see, first of all, lower inflation rates as seen through the CPI and PPI data. Then your currency increases in value, higher investment into countries with higher interest rates. Um, I don't think I've discussed this previously, but I just want to clear it up now. The reason why the currency actually increases in value as interest rates increases is because the investment globally, you start to see, because if you've got a pot of money and you want to invest your currency, your capital somewhere, you want to look for somewhere where you have the highest rate of return. Usually that's done through higher interest rates. Now, of course, if your economy is deflationary, that means interest rates are increasing. Therefore, your currency also increases in value. Bonds start to look attractive due to the higher return of investment, decreased consumer spending around the economy, so less economic activity. Businesses can go bankrupt as they can't pay loans, back loans, and obviously they default on these. And then, of course, in terms of saving, lots of people would rather save in that economy than spend because the economy is rigid, which leads to a rigid economy. Of course, people would want that higher return of investment, saving their money, keeping it as cash in banks rather than spending it in the stock market, which is very risky at the time. So, guys, I hope this clears everything up. This is pretty much a summary of everything up to now of what we know about the economy. Moving on into the third stage and obviously the fourth stage of the fundamental course, we're going to be looking in more detail of actual drivers of the economy. So far, we've looked at policies of how they control the economy. So we've pretty much been looking at the brakes of the economy. If you refer back to our economic train video in one of the introductory videos. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and take care. And I'll see you in the third section.